Hey everyone, we're going to start letting people flow in. It is 1 o'clock. We're having a few technical difficulties and we're waiting on our guest Bea. So I'll give you a few minutes to log on and we'll get things started here in about 2 minutes. All right, for those of you just hopping on, we're going to get started here in about a minute. We're having some technical difficulties and Bea will be joining us shortly. So I'm just giving her a few extra minutes, giving you guys a few extra minutes to hop on and we'll get things rolling here. Here we go. How are you, Bea?
I'm so happy to see you. How are you?
Good. It's great to see you as well. We're just letting people kind of flow on. I'm going to give a quick intro and then I will let you take it away. Sound good?
That sounds great. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, welcome you guys. This is Bea Wray. She has dazzled audiences for 20 years speaking about entrepreneurship, leadership, and women in business. She is the author of Barnes & Noble bestseller, What an MBA Taught Me, But My Kids Made Me Learn. Additionally, Bea is the co-founder of the Millennial Women Network, empowering and mentoring women in 24 countries. She has launched several high-tech and non-tech companies and served as a founder, mentor, and investor and board member to several companies. Wow, do you sleep ever? She also has served as the executive director on the entrepreneurial nonprofit, the Creative Coast, and as the chair of the Forbes Book Entrepreneurship Practice Group. Everyone give a big welcome to Bea. We're so happy to have you with us here today. We also have Kristen on here with us today. Kristen McLean is in the audience watching. She's here from the Vivid Ink Company. And what Kristen does is this really cool thing where she transforms spoken word into lasting and actionable works of art. Her drawing will be included in the recap that's sent out to you guys, as well as takeaways and a recording. We always get 50 million questions. There will be a recording. You can go back and watch it. And then today we're going to be talking about business and people. So as we all know, business cannot be done without people. So people skills matter. In this webinar, Bea's going to be sharing a motivational presentation tying Harvard Business School lessons to the development of soft skills like gratitude, focus, and perspective in a powerful and impactful way. Through this webinar, audience members will build soft skills in themselves and in their teams. And additionally, CEOs will increase their hiring power while decreasing recruiting and turnover costs. Attendees are going to learn to leverage the full power of their staff and maximize employee engagement and performance. It will leave you inspired, entertained, and energized. So Bea, I'm going to let you take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. Do I get to share my screen and show the slides?
Absolutely. At the bottom of the screen there, you see your green.
Everybody, you get to see all my pictures. Isn't this fun?
Wow, never seen someone do a PowerPoint in Canva. I love that.
Unfortunately, it makes me they have to go through my dirty laundry to get to the presentation mode. So here you are. Thank you, everyone. Super excited to be with you. Just looking forward to it. So give you a background on me. I'm going to introduce you to my parents. My name is Bea Wray. Sometimes when I talk to Siri, I get a little competitive with her because my name is Bea, and you may pronounce it D, Bea, Day, Bea. She often says Bea Wray. And I think, wait a minute, I'm in motivational speaking. You're in artificial intelligence, but she's out there telling me Bea Wray, be a ray of sunshine. So what I love about this picture is that it reminds me how grateful I am that my name is actually Bea, because it almost was Yellow Jacket. My parents are huge Georgia Tech fans, and I think Bea is just a second best option for Yellow Jacket. So
Hey, Bea, real quick, I forgot to mention to the audience that this is very interactive. You have a Q&A and a chat box at the bottom. So make sure you're using those. If you have any questions, I'm sure Bea will be happy to answer them.
perfect. Now, are you watching the chat for me?
Absolutely. I'll watch the chat for you. And do you want me to save them to the end, or you just kind of want me to pop them in as they come?
Whatever, you get to decide.
I'll surprise you.
And then we can get in a conversation. I just don't get to see the chat if I'm seeing on and I'm presenting. It doesn't show up. So I don't want to.
Totally fine. I'll keep it monitored.
So you've already known all about me, given a little bit of a background. One of the things that sometimes my favorite introduction is not accolades, but that I flunked German class, that I got a 13 on my biology test, that I had $700,000 of personal debt. So give yourself a high five if you're like me and you've had some failures and you got up the next morning anyway. Says that's really what entrepreneurs are doing, and that we wouldn't be here trying to learn more if we weren't ready to learn and grow. So sometimes it's worth talking about things that don't make us perfect and the chance to grow and learn. And that, of course, is how we connect with people. Business is done with people, so people skills matter, and we are going to talk about people skills today. What I found is that raising children was the greatest way for me to learn people skills. So I did attend Harvard Business School. I had this one incredible job at a point when I had stepped away from a corporate world. I raised my kids for 6 years on a bridgeless island. And when I came back, I wondered, why? First of all, I was terrified that I would be able to do anything. And how was I going to be able to manage a new job? And what happened was that was when my career took off. And I thought, what's happening here? Why are things going so well? And over again, I would just ask that question. And then I wondered, where did I get the skills to help people find new venture capitalists, to find investment, to pivot their companies, to make partnerships? What was I doing? How was I able to impact people? And over again, the answer wasn't that I had attended business school. It wasn't that I had over a decade encouraging and coaching entrepreneurs around the world. Over and over again, the answer to how did I become more helpful in business was that I had been a parent. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I have recently published a book. It did become a bestseller. It's called What an MBA Taught Me, but my kids made me learn. And if I'm going to share the brag with you, I have to also share how. So how did it become a BarnesandNoble.com bestseller? And the answer is by mistake. So if you've ever done everything perfectly, you and I will not get along. But if you've made some mistakes, or you've had an moment, a frustrating moment, there was something you wanted to have happen, something that was promised to you, and it just wasn't happening. So last year, when the book came available on pre-sale last summer, I was told it'll be up on Amazon tomorrow. It'll be up on BarnesandNoble.com. Send all your friends. So indeed, we had a huge social media following, and I'd done different kinds of writing. And so people were ready to buy the book. Great problem to have. And it didn't show up on Amazon. I was frustrated. Next day, didn't show up on Amazon.com. I was frustrated. So hundreds of people who would have bought the book on Amazon.com, and that's a much broader market, unless you have a really small channel within there, ended up buying on barnesandnoble.com, and hundreds of people in a short period went straight to bestseller. So I thought that was kind of fun and exciting. And I love that it's almost a mistake. So the other thing I want to point out about this cover is I'm on a jungle gym. And the reason I'm on the jungle gym is because it's a nod to Sheryl Sandberg. Sheryl Sandberg wrote a book. She was the COO of Facebook, or still is the COO of Facebook. And she wrote a book called Lean In. And in Lean In, she was encouraging us to do many things. And one of them was to think of our careers not as a linear corporate ladder, but more of a jungle gym, as a way of realizing that wherever I am, whichever environment I'm in, what am I learning? Who am I meeting? How am I growing? And so that is why I'm on the jungle gym. And my goal is to validate that parenting is an important spot on your corporate jungle gym. So some of you are wondering, I wonder what car this is. I'm going to go ahead and let you maybe make a guess in the chat if you want to, if you guys are some car people. But I will go ahead and let you know, this is the Ford Torino. When my dad graduated from Georgia Tech, he landed his dream job. He was working in the manufacturing plant at Ford Motor Company in Atlanta, Georgia. And this was exciting. He could play with cars all day long. And every night he got to bring home a different car. It was always this fancy sports car, red, it might've been blue, sometimes it was black. He did not care that night after night, he's working the night shift. He didn't care that night after night, he's working late, sometimes coming home at 2 o'clock in the morning. He didn't care that night after night, it was these long hours and he was on his feet. He's having the time of his life. My mom, on the other hand, is trying to make friends. She's in a new town. They had escaped from Savannah, Georgia, which is sort of a BYOJ, bring your own job town. And they had moved to the big city of Atlanta and they needed to make some friends. So my mom's got my sister and my brother playing on the front yard and she's waving, "Hi, I'm new." And I'm in her belly. She's 9 months pregnant. Nobody walks by. They just keep passing on. The next day she's knitting out front on the front porch. "Hi, want to be our friend?" And they just keep walking by. The next day she's down on her walkway. She's snapping beans. Before you know it, she is in the cul-de-sac and nobody wants to connect with my mom. So my dad's having this great experience driving home these hot rod cars. My mom is very frustrated. And eventually she does break through and she makes friends with these people. And decades later, she's still connected to them. However, she finally went back at some point and said, "What was happening? Why were you not connecting with me? Why were you so unfriendly?" And it was her friend Sandy Smith. She pulled her aside and she said, "Barbara, there you are with 2 young children, a third on the way. This is a family neighborhood, and yet you are entertaining a different man every night, sometimes a red sports car, sometimes a black sports car, but always a new man coming to your house." Well, things are not always as they seem. I like to start off with that one, that you might get a little smile, as I've seen, and 2, it's true. So that's always funny to think about. But 3, when we're about to learn, as we're trying to grow, it's always good to start reminding ourselves, what are we taking for granted? What are we assuming is true? What ways are we not opening our minds up because we're not realizing that things are not always as they seem? And my favorite, of course, is that parenting seems unrelated to business, but indeed, in my experience and perspective, and what I want you to convince you of today, that it is very much related to people skills and people skills related to business. So let's get cracking. We've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about gratitude. We're going to talk about listening. We're going to talk about grace by margin, and we're going to talk about vision. So gratitude. First of all, I want to share with you a story. It was at a Halloween party and my daughter was out trick-or-treating and I was upstairs just finally meeting some of these parents in a neighborhood where I didn't know anyone. And So mom walks up to me and she says, "Tell me about yourself." So I said, "Savannah is my daughter. She's downstairs. And I have a son named Robert Ray, and I have another." And before I could finish my sentence, across the room, I hear someone say, "Robert Ray, Robert Ray." I was going to have a fit. I didn't know what Robert had done, but this man had evidence. He was coming at me with his cell phone, and Robert was going to be in trouble. He gets over to me. He stops with his cell phone on a picture and he says, "This Robert Ray?" But then I calmed down and I realized, oh my gosh, it's one of Robert's thank you notes. So in a split second, he went from "I'm going to kill him" to "now Robert could do no wrong." This man said, "This is a thank you note I got from your son. I carry it with me wherever I go. It inspires me. This is why we do what we do." And I share that story with you because people never forget the handwritten thank you note. A text is nice, an email is nice, but they last a day. So people love to feel gratitude and receive it. But if you can take the extra step to actually writing on pen and paper, I promise you, you will be happy that you did. Robert started this at a time when I decided to start buying the thank you notes by the 300s. So everybody in our house would write one thank you note a day. And it's my absolute favorite system because what happens is you remove all those barriers about thinking, well, should I write this person a thank you note? Or was that gift nice enough for a thank you note? Or did we go to dinner? Or whatever is the thing. And you just start to put it in your habits, like brushing your teeth or exercising is 5 minutes a day writing a thank you note. You already have them all bought. You already have the stamps all available. And what was so important was not the story I just told you about someone receiving the thank you note. Rather, it's the change inside of our own heart and mind. So when my family started doing this, I was the sole provider of 3 children. I was the only caretaker, and I was working a very demanding job with an hour commute. So when I came home prior to the thank you note policy, I would be met at the door with, I was totally exhausted, but met at the door with, "Mom, you're late. What's for dinner? We got to get to soccer practice." Very overwhelming. And what was amazing to me is that we started thank you notes as a way of thanking other people. I didn't realize the impact it would have in our own minds. And about a month in, same job, same commute, same pressure. When I got home, I was met at the door with, "Hi, Mom, I love you. How was your day?" It was unbelievable. And so I invite you to consider the daily thank you note practice and see what will happen in your own life as that progresses. And I believe you will just love the 10 minutes of thinking through, who can I thank today? So we got into a system where the kids would thank a coach, a ballet teacher, neighbors, grandparents, aunts, and uncles. And initially, they would grab a thank you note, and their job was to choose one of those people and write a note. My job was to address them and stamp them. So if you're like me, you start some things and you might do really well, but do you always do it 100%? Or do you sometimes wait for that address or send out an email, but maybe not follow up? Well, I got myself in trouble because we'd be sending out 15 thank you notes a week, and 2 or 3 might end up in the junk drawer because I was still waiting on an address. Well, you guys are leaders, so you know that if we don't keep up with our end of the bargain, we're going to lose motivation. And so I got, "Mom, I wrote that thank you note and you never sent it." I couldn't have that. I had to come up with a better system. So what I started to do was address the thank you note beforehand. So instead of a blank basket, and when I say my kids, my son William was so young that he couldn't even write. He couldn't even write his name. He would just draw a soccer ball and put a W and send that to Aunt Betsy for "thank you for the soccer ball." So really early, we were thinking about this. So of course it made sense that I have to address them. Otherwise, the postman would have never figured out where they were supposed to go. And I would go ahead and put the address of all your teachers, the address of your ballet teacher, the address of any of your coaches on envelopes. And now you're just picking it up and deciding to whom are you writing this day. And that system worked great because 100% of the notes that were written got sent straight to the mail. They were already stamped. But sometimes we go on these great programs and we ebb and flow. And I had actually, for a brief moment, forgotten that we had this system. My kids had gotten much older. They started writing thank you notes to specific people as the day approaches, as opposed to sort of our family system. And I had just forgotten that we had ever had blank thank you notes already addressed and stamped. Until one day we went to move and we were cleaning out the house and I found 3 or 4 of them and I just popped them in the mail. They looked like they were sealed. We live in the humid South Carolina. So I popped them in the mail thinking a late thank you note is better than none. And here is my precious nephew on his birthday receiving a card that he thinks is from his cousins, assumes rightly so that it would be a birthday card, and opens it up to find a blank note. And what I love about it is he and his very special mom got into a conversation about, don't you love invisible ink? And it produced this smile. So even the worst done thank you note, full of mistakes, produces a great smile, and indeed became something that we talk about and he enjoyed and just became a fun experience. So thank you notes, I'm a big fan. We're not going to stop and pause now, but if you would, in the chat, say yes, just commit. This is something you're willing to do, that you're going to pick out a pen and paper and you're going to write a note. And if you're willing and you want to share in the chat, go ahead and say, hey, I'm choosing to write to my wife or to my husband or to my spouse or whomever. That's something that I would love for you to go ahead and do.
All right, everyone, start popping your yeses and your people into the chat. We want to hear all about it.
Nice.
Maggie, we got a yes from her with an exclamation point. Kristen is going to write to her husband and her kids.
So good. So good. Keep it coming. And thank you very much for that. Before I move on to listening, I will tell you one last story about thank you notes, and that is my best business trick. And at one point, I ran a nonprofit and I received thank you notes every single day because we were impacting over 300 people. At the same time, I was writing hundreds of notes a year because we had funders, sponsors, funders. And one day it just felt really overwhelming. And so what I realized is I can take my system I have at home and I can take our funders. I can go ahead and put their addresses and put them on our conference table. And when people came in for a podcast we were doing, for some coaching, something they were doing with their makerspace, and they said, thank you so much for this opportunity, I said, great, I really appreciate it. But if you want to thank me, why don't you just go ahead and thank our funder? And this was the single best business thing I've ever done because I got myself out of the middle and I connected these small, fast-growing companies with the like Boeings and some of the business leaders in our community. So they loved it. I saved some work for our organization. And what I've learned is over and over again, companies, not nonprofits, have taken the same approach. They've heard me speak and they said, oh, we can do that in our company, where instead of just having the salesperson write the thank you note to the client, they might have a customer service person, they may have an administrative assistant, they may have someone in project management that just says, I love working at my company, and because you allow us to serve you, I have a great job. And so imagine how powerful that is. Of course, thank you note from a salesperson is great, but to come from someone else in the company really creates bonds. So I'm a big fan. Find a way to use this. And of course, you always get the other benefits of just the positive energy. So let's move on to listening. And I'm going to tell you a little story. This is, if you can guess who it is, go first one, grab it in the chat. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, this is Beaver Cleaver from Leave It to Beaver. So Beaver Cleaver, it's a 1950s very wholesome story, wholesome show. And Beaver's sitting at the kitchen table and he's filling out a form. And he says, hey, Mom, what's sex? And June Cleaver, his mom, gets a little nervous and flustered and turns kind of red and says, well, Beav, I love you. And, I love your father. And she's just stumbling over her words, drops the spoon, everything. And then finally she says, why do you ask? And he says, well, it says right here on my form, M or F, sex, M or F. So he's, of course, asking about gender, and she's getting on this long story about how people love each other. So that to me is she's not pausing to listen. And I've done that many times, is I rush in with the answer before I'm even thinking about what are they asking. So that's one sort of cute little story to get us thinking about, do we do that? Are we pausing? Are we paying attention? And I'm going to talk about two things, listening better and listening longer. So the idea about listening longer is truly an awkward pause. I had a sales associate that I worked with. Her name was Carolyn, and she mastered this better than anyone I'd ever met. And her sales were literally 3 times as good as many of our other salespeople. So I wanted to go out on appointments and understand what was Carolyn doing. And this is what I found. We'd get there. She had great rapport. She was super charming. She'd be very friendly. And then she'd get in a conversation and the prospect would ask something like, well, how much does it cost? Because I have a $5,000 budget. You guys are busy checking your computer, thinking that I was on mute or that we had a problem with Zoom. Not at all. I'm imitating Carolyn, who did a great job of getting prospects to give her additional information because she'd mastered listening longer. Similarly, a prospect might say something like, well, when can the contract be ratified? So if you can do it by Monday, I'll sign with you. And this was so powerful. One of the organizations I work with likes to say, let the silence do the heavy lifting. It's particularly helpful in sales. It's very helpful with your direct reports. It's critical in negotiations. I hone this skill with teenagers because if you can keep them quiet, they will tell you where they've been, how late they had the car, and who they were with. And so I need to keep myself quiet so they can do the talking. Some tips to actually listening longer and listening better, I believe, are to actually organize your time and think about specific goals and even the rhythm. So when I think about a pie chart of my time, I want to make sure if I'm on a 1-hour meeting that I'm talking 35% of the time and the other person is talking 65% of the time. And so you can think about that as a pie chart, very similar to a clock, an old traditional clock. But let's go a little deeper and even walk through what that might look like in a rhythm. And so what I found is if I'm going to really get you to share, I have to offer some information first. So I've created this little illustration where I'm the speaker and I'm in the black, and then you, my sales prospect, my direct report, my potential business partner, person I'm having a meeting with that I want to learn from. I want to make sure that I get disciplined about listening is in white. And what I found is early on, I have to talk. I can't just show up and say, hey, tell me everything you need and how we'll do business together. You will clam up. You'll give me a 4-minute phone call or a face-to-face meeting, and then you're out of there. I got to show up. I need to be authentic. I need to tell you a little bit about my life. And then I'm tossing it back, almost like a lob in tennis. And I'm going to ask you open-ended questions, not a lot of specific questions. And I don't want to dump on you all of the things that are important about my company. But if I can just continue to ask you an open-ended question, then you are going to participate with me. And so I now have sales teams all over the country that place this little image next to their desk because it reminds them when they're on the phone call to let the other person talk more, and 2, to ask those very quick open-ended questions like, how did that go for you? Who else was involved? When was that? Just keeping them talking, not necessarily. They will eventually bring out their budget, but sometimes we hone in with real specific questions and we keep them quiet as opposed to letting them talk. The
This
most,
is brilliant.
yes,
I like this a lot. I love this diagram.
thank you. Thank you. The most important part about it is the end, is this zagged line, is when I realize that it is 3 to 5 minutes only out of an hour conversation where I'm going to get the meat. You're going to tell me who my competition is. You're going to tell me about how the decision-making process works. If there's a board meeting, if you have to run it by your boss next week, you might even tell me your budget. You might tell me your time frame. You might tell me the thing that you're most concerned about. You may tell me all of those things in 3 to 5 minutes, but you'll definitely tell me enough, 2 to 5 of those things, that's going to keep our conversation going. That's going to allow me to bring you in to do business with you in a powerful way. And the reason this was so important for me to learn is that whole area in there between 3 and 9, between the 15 minutes and the 30 minutes, I used to try to micro control. I used to try to bring it back. You might be talking about a ski trip with your family. You might be talking about this horrible experience you had at work. And I might had felt, oh, wait, that's not totally related. Let me tell you about the 5 things that are great about our company. And I would try to control the conversation. It was always a bad idea, because even if you seemed like you were going off track, you were building trust and you were enjoying the conversation because I was listening to you. And people do not care what you say, they care how you make them feel. And so if I can listen to you, you can at least feel important and know that I care. And that's a great basis for doing business together. And so when I learned to let go of controlling that early on, those 30 minutes of the conversation, I really gained a lot of trust. And it's right at about minute 40 where I start to speak again for almost 4 or 5 minutes. And that's where I learned for me to speak back. What I've heard from you is what seems important to your organization are the following. The best way I can serve you is that I'm repeating back what I think I've heard. And now you've got 10 minutes where you say, yes, no, add this. And then that's when you start to tee up all of those good nuggets. So to me, I want you to not only listen better and listen longer, but if you can add this as a strategy, I know you will love the success that you see. So there is a listening exercise that I want you to think about. Again, I don't want to pause too much here, but I want to tell you that if you're like a lot of us, you probably make a mistake that I have made. And that is that you have in your head things that you want to impart. Maybe there's 6 great things about your company, features and benefits. You have a fast recovery time. You have a fast response time. You have excellent customer service. You have the best price. You have the most innovative product. Many of us train our teams to know all of these things that are great about us, that we just spit it out. So I want you to write those things down on a piece of paper. Those are great things for you to have and to be thinking about whenever you're on a phone call. But then I want you to cross them out. So in the chat, you can write one great thing about your company if you want. You're innovative, you're smart, you hire the best people, all of those things. But then I want you to not care about those things. And the reason is, people are not going to buy from you because they're half committed to the 6 things that are great about your company. They're going to buy from you because of 1 or 2 of those things. So you can't be spilling out the 6 great things, or you'll never learn or hear from them about the 1 or 2 that are important. So what we need to do is cross those things out. We don't want to talk about them. We need to replace them in our mind with open-ended questions. How did that work for you? How did that feel? Who else was involved? Those kinds of open-ended questions that keep people talking. And that's when they're going to tell you, well, the reason I'm really working with you is because I need the most innovative product. We don't care what we pay for it. The reason I'm working with you is because right now we're in a cash crunch and I need you to give me the best price. Whatever it is, you've got to hush up long enough to hear what they're going after. So I want to tell you a little story because this gives me a chance to brag. And this is a painting that my son did. And he painted this picture of Jerry G from the San Francisco 49ers, because I live with the world's biggest 49er fan, at least east of the Mississippi. And I tell the story because I went to business school with Gideon Yu. And Gideon is now an owner of the San Francisco 49ers. So we were in school together, and he was brilliant. And he ended up being the CFO of both Yahoo and of Facebook. So just did incredibly well. And that allowed him to be at the 49ers. Well, the reason I tell you that is because we all went to a game one time and I said, "Oh, Gideon, it's so great to see you. You know, I'm the reason for your success." Well, he thought that was kind of funny and just said, "Thanks," because he's a really nice guy. But as the weekend progressed, he kind of came back to me and said, "So what do you mean by that?" And I reminded him that although he's brilliant at finance, which was why he was the CFO of these big companies, he could work with little companies and understand their value as he was trying to buy them up by the big company. But I did terrible in finance class. And I went to a school where it was all case study method. So there's 80 people in a room. And one of the things that was told to us at our reunion was, you came here with a story to tell, you left world-class listeners. And there's nothing more true, because in our case study method, what we had to do is we had to listen to every one of the other 79 people, and our grade depended on our ability to build on what they said, contradict what they said, improve, correct, anything. And we had to speak. Actually, the class spoke about an hour and 15 minutes out of an hour and a half class. The professor only spoke 15 minutes. And then it was watching around. And so what would happen is we'd have finance class, and the question would be something like, is this the right valuation for this company? Should we buy that company? Should I sell my company at that price? And around the room, people would throw out different answers and different reasons. And what was so funny was our professor would always say, "But can Bea understand? Can Bea understand?" Because I was clearly the worst person in the class. And they would have these highfalutin answers of how they would value the corporation. And our French professor, who hated my name, Bee, bzz, that's an animal. She's Bea. Can Bea understand? And so all of the other 79 knew that they had to speak to me where I was. They had to listen and hear where I was confused about their valuation. They had to make sure that we were on the same path, or we could never move forward. So many years later, at this opportunity where we were at a football game, I explained that. All I had to say to Gideon was, "But can Bea understand?" And he knew exactly what I meant because he remembered it. And I said, if I had not taught you to hear where people are, meet them where they are, be able to give your explanation in a way that is understandable, I don't think those people would have trusted you. And I don't think you would have been as successful at making so many acquisitions. And he said, "You're right." So I still don't have all my season's 49er tickets, but maybe if COVID ends, I'll be back. But the lesson for you is two-part. It is that we need to meet people where they are. We need to listen for what that is. We need to be deliberate in talking in a language that they can understand. And then the second thing, which is my favorite lesson, is often our weakness is a strength. And in this case, my weakness brought out a strength in Gideon and in others. So that was something that I want to be able to offer. In the chat, who's this? Oops, not going to make you guess too long, but this is Cindy Lou Who. Cindy Lou Who from The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. And Cindy Lou is at this moment saying to Santa Claus, "But Santa, you don't put the Christmas tree up the chimney." She's caught him in the act. Well, I already told you that I've had some bad days. I had $700,000 of bad debt of personal debt when I walked away from an 18-year marriage. It was a devastating time. And the day that I woke up from this experience was when my daughter looked exactly like this. And I call it my Cindy Lou Who moment. We had this beautiful house. I never wanted to lose it. And we were months behind in a mortgage payment. And what I did is I rented out our house week by week by week, which was a beautiful place on the coast of South Carolina. And I would stay in more of like a dilapidated place so that we could have the difference in income. And some of those weeks, we also went to my brother's country club, a friend's lake house, my parents' beach house. So to this day, my sons, who were quite young, remember that summer as like this great summer of adventure. But while we were staying in a condo with many things broken down, including the dryer, I was up on a chair hanging up the clothes to dry them. And Cindy Lou Who walks in, my daughter, and says, "This isn't vacation, is it, Mom?" So that was me acting like Santa Claus, getting caught, and whoops, this was a pressure moment. I have got to find a way to get us out of this bad situation. So I share that story because I want to get to know you. And my guess is you've had bad days. I've had bad days. That was an example of my bad day, but we got out of it. And for the next 3 years, I worked 3 full-time jobs. The debt is washed away now, and we're in a much better place. I don't ever want you to work 3 full-time jobs, but if you do, I want, even if you don't, which I hope you never do, I want to share with you the lessons that I learned at that time that allow me to build margin in my life. And these lessons allow me to relax, enjoy, and just take a little bit of time to enjoy with other people. So here we go. The while system. Do something while you're doing something else. Oh, looky here. You can conduct a webinar and build our arms. There we go. Do something while you do something else. Sometimes I have 2 desks. I'm not at one of them right now, but I have actually given 3-hour workshops while I was pedaling under the desk because you can. And because if you're like me, some days you wake up to a son, this happened today, not going to the gym at 5:30. My son needed to go to the emergency room. When you're a working parent, he's doing fine. Thank you very much. But it was a busy morning and I might just have to do my arm curls as we talk. So the while system. It might be cut and paste emails while you're watching a movie, what have you, as you catch up. My favorite margin activity is timed email. Every morning when I start my day, I've got about 60 emails that are going to go out and I don't need to send them. They are an email because I was sending out a group of emails but I customize every single one of them and I time them for tomorrow morning. They are emails because it's on like a personal drip campaign. I want to introduce you first to myself. Maybe only 25% of the people will reply. But while I have your LinkedIn profile open, while I'm thinking about you and your company and what's important to you, I'm going to go ahead and send you next week's email, which is, hey, I reached out to you. I wanted to also share with you my media kit, or I also wanted to share with you my bio. And then I usually get another 15 or 20%. And then I'll have a third email, which is sort of the final email of, hey, haven't heard back from you. If you're still interested, please let me know, kind of thing. So if you reply back to me, I just can go find my follow-on email in my drafts box and delete or alter it and say, thanks so much for the reach out. Here's my media kit. Or if you don't reach out, those emails are just going to happen. So I love having timed email. It's sort of like, you hit a button and your dishwasher is washing and you're not even there, or the Roomba vacuum cleaner. It's like you are 2 places at once because you've set this up, this timed email. There are other reasons for timed email, like just send in 1 hour. I have found that almost no one needs a response immediately, that most people can get a response in 1 hour, maybe 2 hours. And so what we did is we instituted the 1 hour policy in our customer service team. If they thought it was really urgent, of course, you can pick up the phone or you could email them. But normally, if it's blood, you're going to go pick up the phone. If it's something else, let me answer your questions. Let me give you your calendar. Let me review your bill. That reply can be made within 1 hour. And what we found was now our customer service team can go answer the other 10 emails rather than getting in a loop back to back to back. And so they created a system where people are not as demanding. They're feeling like they're all getting served. Our customer service team was not so crunched. One of the most important things we ever did was give them that cushion, that margin. So a second thing we're going to talk about is right here, my calendar. My second favorite technology benefit for building margin is that I never make a email or a request that says, hi, can we talk next Tuesday? How about 2 o'clock? How about 3 o'clock? And all of that back and forth. My calendar is just available for you to see and to use. And I know I save at least 1 hour a day not scheduling those kinds of meetings. What I have also learned is people are happier because I'm not wasting their time and because they get to control it. So I'm a huge fan of, I use Calendly. You can use any system you want. It now comes free with many like Outlook and Google. So does the timed email, by the way. That comes free as well with those systems. So those are two systems that I really love. A third is all of my calls are on conferencecall.com. It's one phone number. I go to the same one. And if you choose, you and I are talking about an event we might do together. There's going to be a lot of details. I have the option to say, hey, do you mind if I record this call? So now that frees me up. I might be going for a walk while I'm talking to you because I don't have to be chained to my desk to make notes. And what I love to do in the conference call, once I get this MP3 that I can share with you and say, thanks so much for the call, and you have all the information, but I will rarely go back and listen to a whole 45-minute call. I might, depending on if they were telling a story, but what I like to do is I like to upload it and have it transcribed. And now there are many systems. I'm switching to a system called Rev, but I've used this system Temi a lot. And what happens is now I have all of the notes from all of my calls, and they are, I can search for them. So that is really, really, really powerful. So in other words, if someone says, oh, I was talking about the Wake Forest soccer game, I can be like, oh, I had 10 phone calls last week. Who talked about the Wake Forest soccer game? And that's searchable because I have the transcribed notes. So what I believe when we're trying to build margin is it's really hard to focus. Has anybody ever thought about your time as a pie chart? All of the things that we have to do. One of the things I want you to do, not right this minute, is draw a circle and make a pie chart with your activities. Here I have things like meetings. It's actually better to think about it as responsibilities. Maybe you're responsible for setting a vision in your company. Maybe you're responsible for all of the accounting. Maybe you're responsible for recruiting. And then think about that in the top 4 to 8 things that you are responsible for and how much of the time you're spending on each one. And if you're like most of us, what you want to do is expand that circle. But guess what? You can't. There's no way to make the time bigger. So as much as I want you to try to do this, I want to tell you that it's not my favorite method. So think about it as a pie chart so that you're smart. Am I spending too much time on certain tasks or certain responsibilities? But if you're like a lot of us, that's going to start to feel like a roulette wheel. And wherever that darn marble lands, that's where you're spending your time. And I want you to port all of that time over into a bullseye target. I want you to move those 9 responsibilities into what's most important and put that at the center. I've talked to over 300 entrepreneurs, and they all can find one or two items that if they get those items done well, everything else works. So for some people, that might be cash flow. It might be keeping your top 4 clients most happy and growing. You need to figure out what is most important for you. It might be setting a vision. It might be well training people. And it doesn't have to be the same thing this month as it is next month or next quarter. They almost always change quarter by quarter. But if what I want you to do is identify what's most important, and in the 300 people that I've worked with, they all could accomplish those one or two items in 35 or fewer hours a week, not 55. And so now you'll have time for those concentric outer circles. That may be the new website. It may be thinking about a new product. It may be putting out a fire that's not within your exact realm. But if you can realize those are outer concentric circles that you should really only get to when you have done your most important, I think you will feel a lot less harried and a lot less like you're on that roulette wheel. Here's a way that might help you. You've probably seen this before, but some of us spend too much time in things that are urgent. Someone's stopping by, someone's calling us, someone has a crisis, someone just wants to talk about their priority. If we can decrease our interruptions by blocking off our time, for example, or decrease the time that we're spending on email by timing them the way we talked about earlier, and block off time and build some margin and move things. These are just my examples. I want you to create a blank one and think about what are the things that you are doing that are not important, but they are urgent. That's quadrant number 3. And we want to replace those things with things that are important and sometimes maybe not even urgent. That's the best way we can spend our time planning, setting goals. Those are things that are really critical. And so if we can move from quadrant 3 to quadrant 2, what's so amazing is quadrant 1 gets smaller. So that can be really excellent. All right, so we are getting to wrapping up pretty quickly here. My last sort of margin activity is I drive the speed limit. So that is an easy one. And it was amazing when I started doing that. I became early became on time and a lot less stressed. And I had more time to just think through what I was doing. So build that into your schedule if you like. And real quickly, we're just going to talk about vision. And I show a picture of my pal Robert here, my son, because for a long time, he just was playing basketball, but I wasn't sure if he was getting any better. And we put a bright pink X out on the driveway. And I just said, make 30 shots from this spot. And it was so amazing because that discipline of doing the same thing over and over and over again. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to, Mom, I'm not always open from one spot. I can't just learn to shoot from one spot. But that discipline and digging deeper into his skill set was so powerful that he was able to watch himself. Well, to make 30 shots on the first day, he had to try 40. The next day, he only had to try 37. And he watched himself get better and better and better. And so I have learned that as a sales coach, that if I just have my clients today, for this whole month, we're just going to focus on prospecting. What does the prospect look like? How many are we going after? Where are we finding them? How do we describe them? What resonates with this kind of prospect? Next month, we're just going to talk about closing. Maybe the next month, we're just going to talk about presentation. But to me, part of a vision is breaking down the vision into the parts. Another part, and this is straight from Align. This is a software system that I love. I hope you know all about it. And it's called Align by Petra. And what they can help you do is break down everybody's goals in the company. So if you have 80 people in your company, we need to know who's doing what and who's doing what this month, this quarter. And so what I loved is our ability not only to track things like, uh-oh, I'm in the red, which there was a lot of red on this. This means we're behind. Yellow, we're within 10% of our goal. And green, we're on track. But my favorite aspect of the software, and you can see by this image, is the parent priority. My belief is there should never be any job in the entire company that's not related, that doesn't roll up into my boss or my company or my division's goals, so that we can all know that what the company's goals are, and that my job today is going to lead us to those sales numbers, those revenue numbers, that profit number. So big fan. That system is all about breaking things down into their parts. A different kind of vision is just the visual, having a vision board. Don't just say you're going to eat well, have a picture of strawberries. Don't just say you're going to exercise and get in shape. Look at a beautiful ballerina. I wanted to write a book, so I had to put up a poster of a book. And when I told you it became bestseller, it was right next to Rachel Hollis. So that was so fun for me because she had been on my vision board. So the last exercise I'm going to leave you with, and I really want you to commit to this in the chat. It's not easy, but what you have the opportunity to do is give yourself 1 hour. And there I want you to write down all the detail. I want you to tell us you're at your corporate meeting, you are eating dinner and you're celebrating with lobster tails, you're in the Bahamas. I don't care what it is, but describe in detail where you are and look back on 3 years of accomplishments, the great people that you hired, the sales that you made, the customer satisfaction rate that you achieved, the new products you introduced, everything that you have accomplished in the last 3 years in detail, and why was that so great? The trick is the date that you're writing this, you're going to do it in the next week, but it's 2024. And you're going to be looking back on 3 years of accomplishments as if they have already happened. And then I hope you find a partner and talk about it. So as we wrap up, I'm going to tell you one final story. I started talking about Georgia Tech, so I want to go back to that. I was captain of my Emory tennis team, which means I had the best attitude. I was not the best player, but my goal was to go down the street in Atlanta and make a friend at Georgia Tech. And in one day, I had the privilege of playing one of the matches and couldn't wait to meet my friend. I knew we'd lose. We lost every year, 9-0. We lost every match, practically 6-0, 6-0. And as expected, I'm playing number 5 doubles. I'm out there with my partner. We're down 6-0 in the first set, about 3-0 in the next set. And what happened is the ball got beamed right at me. I fell down. I got up. I said, don't worry. I'm okay. It didn't hit me. She said, I don't care if you're okay, but if it hits you, it's my point. Well, I don't know what you would have said to that remark, but I said the only thing that came to mind. And I said, does this mean we're not going to be best friends? She didn't like that, and we didn't necessarily become best friends, but I want to be your friend. If there's a way I can help you, I just wanted you to reach out, find me on social media, and I wanted to encourage you that a lot of business is done with referrals, and if that's something that I can ever help you with, then please let me do so. So there's 2 minutes as we wrap up. I just want to say thank you. I don't know if there's any more questions in the chat, or what we might.
Does anyone have any last minute questions? Go ahead and slide those in the chat. That was so great. So many actionable takeaways. I'm over here like feverishly taking notes. But yeah, thank you guys so much for being with us today. And you will receive a recap that'll have the recording. We'll have takeaways. It'll have Kristen's art with it. We'll also include your information so people can connect with you on LinkedIn and reach out. I appreciate you making those connections. And everyone, enjoy the rest of your Monday. Thank you again, Bea.
Thank you.